What is a DX antenna? And who exactly are the Wonder Antenna Company? Hello and welcome once again to the Waters and Stanton video channel. Let me first assure you that the Wonder Antenna Company doesn't actually exist. It's my invention, but I'm going to use that as an example because we're going to talk about DX antennas and the confusion that sometimes reigns over DX antennas may be of interest particularly to beginners. So let's take a look at DX antennas. In my book, DX is an abbreviation for distance. May have emanated from the CW abbreviations. But I think in ham radio terms, DX is perceived as being long distance. Have you worked any DX recently? Which means, have you worked any stations that are some way away? But distance is in the eye of the beholder. I mean, if I was newly licensed and I got a 10-watt rig and I worked into Bulgaria, I might regard that as DX. If I worked into the north coast of Africa, I would certainly regard that as DX. But if I had a 3-element Yagi at 20 meters above the ground and I had a linear running 400 or 500 watts and I worked the east coast of America, would I really regard that as DX? Probably not, no. That would probably be a sort of run-of-the-mill contact provided the bands are open. But I might regard Albania or Afghanistan as DX. So DX is not only distance, it's the rarity value. We talk about DX, but it can mean distance, long distance, or it can mean a rare station, rare island. So there's two ways of looking at the word DX and what we actually mean by the word DX. So let's start by looking at the basic aerial, the dipole, the humble dipole. We look at two dipoles, a dipole that I might make in my garden with a bit of wire and a mast and a bit of coax, and a dipole made by the fictitious company, the Wonder Antenna Company, known commonly as WACO, the WACO Company. So here's the Peter Waters dipole, the G30JV dipole. And here's the WACO dipole, made by the Wonder Antenna Company. Now both these antennas are 20-meter dipoles. So what's the difference? Well, the G30JV dipole is a bit of wire between two poles. It's around about 7 meters above the ground and it works okay. But the WACO dipole is something special. It's optimized. It's made to a very high specification. It comes in a nice presentation box and it's called the WACO DX 20-meter dipole. Wow! Now, if I was new into ham radio, I think I'd be attracted to the WACO DX dipole. What would attract me? Was the word DX, of course. That would attract me. It would convince me that that antenna was going to work DX. And the fact is that it can work, will work DX. And it's nicely made. And if you were buying that antenna, you wouldn't really be disappointed because it was doing what it said on the packet. But so did my homemade dipole that worked in exactly the same way. It wasn't so smart, grant you, and it may not have lasted so long, but it would work the same DX at the same height as the Wacko DX. So the Wacko DX is using the title to encourage you to buy it, because you might think that it's going to work better than poor old Peter Waters' wire dipole hung up in the garden. No, they're equally capable of working DX. Now, it's important to note that all antennas work DX, but a lot of the time it's not the design of the antenna that decides whether you're going to work DX or not. It's the placement of the antenna. Now, if I was to raise my dipole up to 10 metres half wave and the Wacko up to 10 metres half wave, I'd have a reasonable amount of low angle radiation, so the signals would come up at a fairly low angle, be reflected and back down at distance, and likewise receive. So the chances are I would work DX when the bands are open. I wouldn't work as much DX as if the dipoles were higher, but the old Wacko DX and my wire antenna would be identical in terms of signal received and signal transmitted. So what about the Wacko 3-element Yagi? Covers 10, 15 and 20 metres. The Wacko 3-element DX multiband antenna. Well, that's a mouthful, isn't it? Well, it probably is a DX antenna in as much as it's got gain over a dipole. It's probably got a gain of about 6 or 7 dB over a dipole. That's a forward gain. But do remember that the angle of radiation from a Yagi at a given height is exactly the same as a dipole. That was covered many years ago in an excellent book by W6SAI, who wrote a complete book on Yagi antennas. Very good. But anyway, it's got the same angle of radiation as a dipole. The gain is achieved by the 3 elements, multi-elements, forward gain. So yes, it will give you a bit more DX because you're going to have forward gain. But, you know, if you have a dipole at 10 metres and a Yagi at 10 metres, all you're getting is that gain. Now, also, of course, that DX multiband Yagi is the same as the XYZ 3-element Yagi or the Peter Waters 3-element Yagi. The fact that it says DX doesn't mean to say it's any better than in the other 3-element Yagi. And what about high gain? Now, high gain is a range that we do. There must have been a bit of controversy over that originally. High is spelt HY, high gain, but a lot of people will draw from that the high gain Yagi or the high gain antenna has got gain. Well, the high gain Yagi has got gain, but it's no higher than any other Yagi. So it's a bit of a misnomer, really, and that's another example, really, where the name can actually influence the purchase. Interesting, isn't it? Now let's have a look at the vertical. The Peter Waters vertical is a simple vertical strung up along a spider pole. We'll again assume it's a 20 metre vertical. That's a G30JV vertical. Now the Wacko vertical is much smarter. It's got self-supporting tube. It's also got 4 radials. It also covers the 20 metre band. Wow, this is another optimised antenna from Wacko. It's the Wacko DX vertical. Wow, that's sure to give me good results because it's a DX vertical. Well, in actual fact, it's no different from the Peter Waters one on the left. The construction may be better, it may look better engineered, but performance is identical. So once again, is the name influencing the purchaser? Interesting, isn't it? You know, whether you work DX or not really is as much about placement of the antenna as it is the antenna itself. If we go back to the dipole, a dipole that is 5 metres above the ground is going to have a fairly high angle of radiation. It's not going to have low angle of radiation, so it's not going to be best place for working DX. It will emit some low angle radiation, but a very small amount. As you raise the antenna, so the angle of radiation goes down. You get up to a half wave, and that's not a bad height to aim for, particularly on the higher bands. It's not really practical for a lot of people on the lower bands, but 20 metres, get the antenna up to 10 metres and you'll start to get some reasonable low angle radiation. Go a bit higher and it's even better. I mean, I've often said I'd rather have a dipole at 20 metres than a 3-element Yagi at 8 metres, because the angle of radiation on that dipole is so much lower that although you've got forward gain on the Yagi, that forward gain is that sort of angle rather than that angle, whereas the dipole is down at that angle. Now, you can go higher and higher, but of course actually what happens is the pattern starts to break up a bit, but you still get good low angle radiation. So it's as much about the height of the antenna in the case of a dipole as it is about the antenna itself, and the same really applies to a Yagi. If you have a Yagi, tri-band Yagi at 10 metres, it's going to work pretty well on the 10 metre band, and it's going to work pretty well on the 15 metre band, but on 20 metres it's a bit low. It's not going to have too much really low angle radiation. You're going to have forward gain, of course, which helps a bit, but really and truly you want to go a bit higher. Now, when it comes to verticals, we're almost in a similar situation. It's placement. If you have a vertical in a small suburban garden surrounded by trees and houses and so forth, you're not going to get as much low angle radiation as you should do. It's there, but it's very quickly absorbed. And so the placement of the antenna, even if it's a vertical, put that vertical in the middle of a field, put it in the middle of a field, great. Put, I don't know, 10, 15 radials around it, and it'll work quite well. But unfortunately, not all of us have got fields to put a vertical in. So if you put the vertical in a small garden surrounded by all the things that gardens surrounded by your houses, and the telegraph poles and bushes and trees and etc., then a lot of that signal is lost. And there was a very, very good article actually on Radcom a few months ago. If you raise that antenna, even if you raise it about 2 metres off the ground and use tuned radials, you get a significant improvement. So verticals placement as well. So really and truly, a DX antenna is only a DX antenna if it is properly situated at the right height. Now, we can't all do that. In fact, many of us can't. So you have to make the best of a bad job. All aerials will have a certain amount of low angle radiation. It might be very small, but at least it's there. When conditions are right, it may just be right to get you where you want to go. And of course, as with all things in ham radio, we struggle with the fact that we are not professionals. We haven't got all the facilities we'd like, and that's why it's called amateur radio. Make the best of what you've got. Make the best of what you've got. There we are, that's my take on the position of antennas. It's very important actually, but we can't always achieve what we'd like to achieve. Therefore, we have to accept what we've got and enjoy it. And a lot of people do enjoy it. It's not all about DX. So that's my take on the actual placement of antennas. So, a dipole is a dipole. Engineering wise, there's nothing you can do with a half-wave dipole to make it work any better than any other half-wave dipole. A Yagi is a Yagi. A 3-element Yagi is a 3-element Yagi. You can play around with the element space in a bit. But basically, one 3-element Yagi is like another. The only difference will be the engineering quality. And a quarter-wave vertical is a quarter-wave vertical. My quarter-wave vertical run up the side of a spider pole is as good as a 2-inch or half-inch or 1-inch aluminium tube. You can argue the bandwidth will be slightly better on a tube, but it's negligible. You can add radials to the vertical, but you can do that on any vertical. You can get up to 3 dB gain by lifting the vertical off the ground, but you can do that with any vertical. So the name DX doesn't actually mean much. Yes, you can work DX with a vertical and a Yagi and a dipole. But there are other fanciful names as well. There's penetrator, thunderbolt, lightning, I don't know, earthquake, all sorts of funny names. But doesn't actually make the antenna better. But it does make it more marketable. So the lesson really is that when you're looking at antennas, look at the antenna for what it is and don't be sort of mesmerised or influenced by the name, because the name is a marketing implement. What you're interested in is the antenna, what it is it a dipole, is it a Yagi, is it a vertical, and also the engineering. I mean, commercial antennas, generally speaking, are far better than homemade ones, but it doesn't mean to say that they work any better. So there's a lesson to be learned there, isn't there? Oh, by the way, I have to apologise if anybody was about to register the name of Wacko, the Wacko Antenna Company. Apologies. I didn't mean to offend you or offend the company. There we are. Anyway, I hope that it promotes some thought. And if you're a newcomer, just remember that when you buy an antenna, you buy it for what it is and not for the name. Thank you for supporting this channel, much appreciated. As usual, take care, enjoy your ham radio, and until the next time, take care. Thanks for watching. Bye.